What is up, people of the internet? Ian, also the Freedom Astrologer here, sitting here again with my good friend Donny Lim, the astrologer and healer extraordinaire. And we have another jam packed, fully packed astrological video for the month of May this time, which is, again, quite eventful. We one might say, and we're in the eclipse. We're in Mercury retrograde. Jupiter is changing signs, so we have lots to cover. Donny, how are you doing this fine
Uh,
evening or morning or whatever?
yeah, it's close to the evening here, and we are taping very close to the solar eclipse, in which we cover in our April video. So if you guys want to visit what we talked about then, you can visit the previous video. For this video, we will actually talk about the lunar eclipse, which will happen middle of May, and then the Gemini new moon that's end of this month. I would say April is kind of like event filled. I mean, there's nothing short of drama. For sure. I think we both like, I think a lot of people who are watching this video know that, someone that we know has gotten her channel hacked. And we did talk about um, for
Cyber
April
attacks.
that Mars and Saturn conjunction in early April, squaring the nodes. And then after that, we've got Jupiter, Neptune together as well, about 8 days later in late Pisces. And yeah, it's just nonstop shortage of pretty melodramatic stuff. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't, I can't, lie and say things have been super easy and just breezy. But I have to say a couple of things, from my own personal perspective. The Pisces energy. We're still, as we're recording this, we're still in the Pisces, abundant Pisces energy, for a little while still. And I don't know if you're like me, but too much of Pisces energy can really, I would say, tire you. And um, the earthly, let's say, duties. It's very hard to work on those earthly duties and even business and take action. The desire to get lost in the ethers and just like disassociate from everything is so heavy, and or it's so abundant that it's kind of hard to navigate those earthly things. But having said that, I have to, like, because it's somewhat still potent. We have the eclipse season as well, so I would say spiritual experiences are abundant. So for me, I had one of the very, very intense, maybe the most intense spiritual initiation experiences this lifetime, I would say. Until this time. It was very, very close to the Jupiter Neptune conjunction. So for me personally, that the conjunction didn't disappoint at all. It was,
It
I would
delivered.
say, it delivered exactly. It delivered fully, 100%. I relocated to another country. I had those spiritual experiences. I think I've never felt so connected to you might say God, or you might say universe, or yourself. In my mind, that's whatever you're connecting to is still a higher part of yourself. And guys, this window is still open, I would say, but I would also want to say, when the Pisces starts to shift a little bit, yes, we have that Taurus energy, but now we're getting into the a little bit of an abundance of fire energy, which many of you, like me, have been waiting for, on a personal level. On a global level, maybe fire energy, I don't know if it's the best right now, I have to say, because you know what's going on with the W situation, and this abundant fire energy can even expand it even further. And one more thing I wanted to say, even through all of my experiences with this conjunction with this astrology, remember, guys, please, like Donny said, go and check out the April video, because I revisited my predictions and our predictions for this April, month of April. And you can use that video for, let's say, definitely 6 months further, even more maybe. And I have to say, it hit me really hard. The place of, how do I put this now? The place of some of the things manifested so directly and so painfully and so painfully evidently into reality. I got into a bit of a situation personally. I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do predictions anymore, because I was like, okay, so if I predict this, maybe negative things or bad things, if I talk about them on a public level, do I give more energy to them, or is it more like a my fear? And I had to go through some personal transformations to be back here to again bring you some predictions as well as some advice. Let's put it that way.
Well, I mean, besides like the hacking stuff in which I observed for April, there's a lot of like scams going around as well. And I've been just kind of like getting so many messages, and which are like scammer accounts. This is so freaking obvious. It's like in plain sight. And I just got to like delete or block certain stuff. It's the Mars and Saturn in Aquarius, right? You block certain information that's coming into you. And there's just also a lot of I think overall a lot of movement restrictions are being lifted with that Jupiter Neptune conjunction in late Pisces. So people are still kind of, I think it's more like the hangover paranoia. Because they've been so long like under that kind of living in fear. And so when things get lifted, they may not kind of get accustomed to like this kind of, it's almost like this cautious optimism. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. And of course, there's a lot of like cuckoo crazy, like, people who are like going crazy on a mental health level. I've gotten some threats actually sent my way. I think you're very well aware of it. I did share with you. And there's just like people not taking care of their mental health and think that they can just smear their business all over other people's page.
Yeah, guys. Donny shared this with me, and Donny shared this with. It's been happening to me as well. I mean, if you're going to be on a public forum,
Yeah.
unfortunately, these things are going to happen. So for those of you who do that, need to be prepared. But
I think it
for
needs to
those
be
of you,
mentioned here that like people are not aware of our mental health as well as
of course,
such. Yeah.
it really influences a person. And I think for me, before I even started to do this work so public, I had to really dig in deep, because I had mentors who, teachers and mentors who received like literally death. They weren't like threats, but it was like, I wish you were dead kind of messages.
Yeah,
And
along that line.
if you get those messages, and Donnie shared some of the meanest ones with me as well.
No, actually,
If
it's
you
the
get
milder
those,
ones. I've gotten worse, which I'm not sure. Yeah, those are the milder ones I've shared. Yeah.
it's crazy, guys, and please don't do that. If you're listening to this and you get the indication of, oh, I need to get my emotional shit onto others, please don't do that. We are human. We are human beings as well. So do your best to write it out, or go to therapy, or transform yourselves in another
At
way.
least awareness will actually take you a long way, right? Because it's just
Definitely.
projection of something that's inside. You know what I mean?
It's always a projection of something that is inside, and it can be transformed, if you have the desire and will to do it.
Yeah.
I wanted to say a couple of words, because you mentioned the part about, this kind of cautiousness, from people, and after those lockdowns, etc., etc. It's like what I've been whenever I move into somewhere else, or move into a place, or even in my daily experience, I always do my best to feel in to the vibration. And if you're kind of like sensitive, intuitive person out there listening to this, you can do this as well. You can feel into the place's vibration, be it an apartment, country, whatever it is. And the vibration lately I've been getting, very much so, it's like everybody is silently afraid a little bit, like there's a percolating fear vibration there. And the other side of that coin is like, but yeah, we kind of like the need to move on and get on with our lives, but like the fear of, oh my God, what's next? What's next for us? What's the next, crisis? What's the next problem is there? So I guess I want to say with this is, there's, we're living on planet Earth, and it's a, basically it's a rock in space moving, you know, through pretty intense speeds, and it's a weird experience here on planet Earth. But the way to go through this is to understand that you are much more, than a, flesh and bones type of a being. You have this eternal presence, eternal energy about you that nobody can take away from you, whatever happens. And how to navigate this fear? To navigate a fear, all you need to do actually is to feel it. And when you feel a fear, and when you experience a fear, then it's much easier to deal with earthly things, whatever. Go to the grocery store, build a business, continue to do so, continue working on your things, because otherwise that fear can really cripple us. And because we're constantly, oh my God, what's next? What's next? What's next?
But I think that because that Jupiter Neptune energy is still so fresh, I mean, it just occurred like on April 11 or 12. And this cycle lasts about 13 years, by the way. So if I were to trace like, when does this conjunction becomes like an opening square, it will actually occur about 3 years and 3 months later, because this Jupiter-Neptune cycle lasts around close to 13 years. And so when Jupiter and Neptune have that waxing or opening square, it will be around June of 2025. And what's really interesting is that Neptune would have ingress into Aries, with actually Saturn tagging behind very closely on one side. And then at that point, when there's an opening square, also Jupiter will be exalted in Cancer in the early degrees as well. So it's like the opening square, when that conjunction becomes like an opening square. And now we are still manifesting a lot of what is possible for us. So do note that this is part of like a longer cycle. So now we are still in that kind of like that new moon phase kind of, but it's not actually the new moon, is we are using Jupiter and Neptune for that analogy. So dream big. That's what I would say, because the possibility is always there to carve out your own destiny. And not to mention that from 2023 to 2026, all the outer planets, when I say outer planets, those will be Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. They'll be all changing signs one by one. So the possibility is really vast for us to manifest into our reality, for that matter, in the next few years. I see a lot of people changing careers and jobs, and like people in your generation, because I'm a bit older, cough. The millennials and also the Gen Z people, they will have this kind of massive push to really align themselves to what they want to do as dictated by their higher selves. Yeah. And all
I
that.
think this is very well said. I think I think I see a lot of people already in that energy, and they're kind of like maybe even subconsciously in it, and they're not yet very conscious of it, but there is a pull, there is something that is drawing them to higher realms, I guess,
and
higher
if you think
purpose.
And if you think about it, like the 3 outer planets will be shifting from the feminine signs all into masculine signs. So it's about really pushing, it's like the externalized energy. It's not so much of like receptive and just, embodiment.
Going with the flow.
Going with the flow. It's more like really like pushing, like pushing outwards. And there's a lot of like energy that's effervescent. Yeah. For that matter. So for the month of May, actually, we're about to cover like informing parts actually. So we're going to talk about the Mercury retrograde, which will start from the 10th of May when it actually goes retrograde. Right now, as we record this video, Mercury is already in shadow.
Oh, yes.
So I'm already feeling it, because Mercury will retrace those degrees that it will travel back, like, where is it now? But the actual retrograde will start on May 10th, and this will last for the rest of May all the way into early June, where it will station direct and cover those degrees that it passed earlier on, like now. And then we'll move on to talk about Jupiter ingressing into Aries. And this is around the same day when Mercury stationed retrograde, interestingly. Yeah, so new fresh energy with Jupiter in Aries, because Jupiter, naturally rules Sagittarius, which is a fire sign. So the trinal fire signs are quite supportive of Jupiterian energies. And we'll then move on to the total lunar eclipse in the middle of this month, happening at 25 degrees 17 minutes of Scorpio. And then we'll look into that. What are the implications? I'm not personally looking forward to it for personal reasons. But then, hey, like it's not that it's the first eclipse, that's in Scorpio at those degrees. Basically, we are revisiting what actually happened, like back in 2003. I think there was an eclipse. Basically, eclipses come back to roughly the same zodiacal point every 19 years or so. So yeah, I got to reflect what actually was happening then. Around this time in 2003. Okay, so to finish up, we'll actually touch on the new moon, end of May, that will be in the first 10 degrees of Gemini. I think this one will happen at 9 degrees of Gemini.
9 degrees, yes.
Yeah, 9 degrees of Gemini. So let's start with this Mercury retrograde first. I mean, Mercury retrograde is not something that's new, but it's like there's so much on the internet and social media that it's almost like it's a damned period, you know what I mean? And the way it's painted is that while Mercury retrograde can seem scary, I must say that there's a lot to gain and also benefit during this time as well. And as we enter into this Mercury retrograde period, this particular one will actually be ranging from around 26 degrees of Taurus till 4 degrees of Gemini. So in those 21 days when Mercury goes retrograde, it will only traverse that 8 degrees zodiacally. So if I were to rank in terms of potency, in terms of Mercury retrograde periods, this one I feel that it's going to be stronger than the other two. The one that's past and the one that's coming. And this is because in those 21 days, it only travels that roughly 8 to 9 degrees, whereas for other Mercury retrogrades, it travels a longer distance zodiacally. So I use that to gauge the intensity. And so Mercury retrograde actually starts on May 10th in early Gemini, and for the rest of the month, all the way into June 3rd in late Taurus. And this actually represents like the May to June retrograde will actually force us out of our comfort zones a lot for this particular one. And also because of its strength. And the last time Mercury retrograde actually occurred in this part of the zodiac was back in 2002. So around 20 years ago. And 20 years is a very important thing here to note, because in zodiacal releasing, as per ancient Hellenistic astrology, Mercury as a planetary lord or ruler actually occupies 20 years in duration. And this is actually why, because Mercury actually retrogrades in the same part of the zodiac every 20 years. And so over this period, you may think that life might seemingly go a bit haywire, during Mercury's backward motion. And if you want to beat any potential like disasters or fiascos to the punch, particularly if they are actually technological driven or related, you may want to purchase those extra gigabytes of Google Drive or iCloud storage space, or get yourself like an extra solid state drive or USB drive in order to back up your stuff. And you may want to also, now that we are already in the shadow phase, you may want to start prepping and save your important work in your computer and all that, and maybe even write down your passwords to easily get in and out of your logins. So you're not kind of depending on like your save passwords function in your browser or your phone for that thing, because there may be some malfunctions going on potentially. And speaking of work, you want to make sure that you're not inviting anything new during this time, because it can potentially throw you off balance or kilter for that matter. And if you can't escape from signing any contracts during this cosmic period, make sure that you give yourself extra time to read the fine print. And because Mercury also rules transport, so give yourself extra time to, in terms of travel time and allowance, because running late can be a potential side effect. Maybe there's a traffic jam, maybe there's more traffic accidents as well. That also can be more prominent under Mercury retrograde. However, Mercury retrograde can also be a time when relationships can come into massive focus, because Mercury is the function of you being understood by another, because it's the planet of communication. So there can be a lot more loss in translation instances, which can lead into arguments, and this can really weigh you down. Or maybe there's something like things that are previously left unsaid now is being like rehashed up to the surface. And sometimes the instances may not be, well, it can go either way really. Either those things that's left unsaid previously can be those that are unpleasant to deal with, and then during this retrograde, everything just flushes up to the surface. Or it can be a very good time to reconcile certain things that's previously unaddressed. So one thing that I find that these 2022 Mercury retrogrades are focusing on is that the first 3 of the year, I'm not talking the one purely in Capricorn end of 2022, but the one that just passed, this one and also the next one, it covers the air sign and then it moves back into the earth sign. So this actually covers like a wider, what do you call that? Wider sphere of life than it were to just be retrograding in the air signs. So over this time, we may be dealing with air-related issues, which is the mind thinking patterns and communications and all that. And then the earth sign part, which is the how we utilize our resources, how we spend money, how our values are, and all those things. So it covers like a wider spectrum. And so in other words, annoyances can actually pop up with regards to the mindset, thought patterns, communications, and relationships. There's more of the air aspect. And it will switch over to the earth part, which are the more tangible element of things. So there's almost like a need for action to actually achieve some kind of concrete or tangible results. And this will actually put a greater focus on material possessions of value, particularly money, how we earn it and spend it, etc. And since the air and earth elements overlap over each Mercury retrograde, this may actually create issues and obstacles on a wider spectrum and affect multiple areas of life. But one common thread I must mention that all of this 2022 Mercury retrogrades highlight is actually the planet Pluto, the planet of ultimate transformation. And so the good news here is that the aspects are overall pretty favorable. While beginning of the year is a conjunction with Pluto, so it's a bit gnarly. But this one that's coming up and also the one coming up in Virgo Libra, those will be trining, like this one, trining Pluto as well. And since all three retrogrades this year, the main ones involve Pluto, it's important to keep in mind that the periods will act as a kind of like a course correction towards our ultimate goals and aspirations. And so these Mercury retrogrades represent like the right cosmic atmosphere to make the necessary changes that will put us in the right direction towards everything that we hoped for and dreamed of. Do you have anything to add before I dive into this particular one?
Oh yeah, I have a lot to add. Guys, I decided to dissect it. If you looked at or watched our last video, I dissected let's say the bigger influences into sections and more like rapid fire key points that you need to focus on. I found that way of doing it more pleasing to me, and it seems people enjoyed it as well. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you like a quick rapid fire of what you need to do, what you need to look out for. And I also wanted to do, for this retrograde especially, obviously every retrograde, give you some, like Donny already gave you already some pieces of advice what to do during a retrograde. And I also created a free ebook that's on my website. So just a little bit of a promo here, but go on to my website. There's a pop-up that you can sign up for, and you get the free ebook as well on how to beat Mercury retrograde. Because in my opinion, personal experience, and a lot of experience with other people, it's not really something to be afraid of. It's something to be welcomed actually in, and then used in this material realm. So how do we use or how do we beat Mercury retrograde? Do more research. Research is really key. Like Donny said here, I think it's a key point about contract signing and signing of contracts. So for me, I haven't ever been able to escape any contract signings. All freaking contract signings, however much I want to avoid, they every time they freaking fall on Mercury retrograde. So when I noticed this pattern, I just, we need to do more research. We need to go really deep into the nitty-gritty details. So please be prepared to do more research and look at the fine print and make changes. So because this is the next key point, be okay with doing things 3 times, because they come back, they come back, they come back. You need to perfect, and then they're finally ready when the retrograde ends and the shadow period or the after shadow period starts. And I want to mention quickly about the shadow periods. Usually when the shadow period is coming in right now, the activities associated with Mercury and where it's at in your natal chart, they speed up, they really quicken. And now all kinds of information, everything is coming your way. You need to write it down. You can't possibly do it all at once, but if you write it down and start taking it action with it during the actual retrograde period, this is the time to do the work. This is the time to go deep. This is the time to put effort in. If you put in the effort, the results in the after shadow period, when you start to get ready, when you start to publish these things, will be much, much better. So need to be okay with doing 3 times, need to be okay with fixing things, making them better. Processing the information is key. So during the pre-shadow, information comes, new information. During the retrograde, what I've noticed here is the older information comes, and you need to put it all together in the work that you're doing. Sometimes it's contract signing, sometimes it's something else, sometimes it's a book, something, there are many forms that it can take. Now, I think one of the things really important that Donny already said is, God, train of thought.
Relationships?
Not yet. Almost. The new thing. If some new project comes to you during the retrograde itself, already after the shadow, this is one of the things I had to test out really intensely. So what I did, some new things came during the retrogrades. I was like, okay, so let's test this theory out and see if they stick. Really got into it, started doing them. Every time when the retrograde ends, the after shadow comes, something happens in your life, something happens in your work that kind of takes this thing that you started during the retrograde. If it's a entirely brand new thing, it kind of puts it in the back burner somewhere you don't need it, or it kind of is obsolete. So I would really urge you to take this advice, and if it comes pre-shadow, yes, okay, but retrograde, probably going to leave afterwards. So be okay with that. And now, also important, learning the things and skills you have started a while ago. Something, maybe you started a while back and it kind of fell down in the back burner, and now the necessity comes again to learn it, to master it, to perfect it. You have to do it 3 times at least. At least in my experience. The relationships, very important part. Usually some people come back to us to be reevaluated. Even if it's not a physical thing, the memory, the idea, the thoughts about these people come back, and we rehash, we think about these things. But very often it's a physical manifestation as well, be it a friend, be it a lover, be it a romantic partner. And we need to go deeper with these relationships as well to see if it's something we need to use or we need to let go of. And it will all be made evident in the after shadow. Everything will be revealed there. And you kind of have to prepare yourself with it, like in a way of, okay, so they come back, okay, I reevaluate, I go into the relationship, but I'm okay in the back of my mind. I have this, okay, there's Mercury retrograde, so I might not yet have the full details of why they're here. Are they changed? Am I changed? Have I changed? Have I transformed enough to be in that relationship? No, maybe yes, maybe no. And maybe that, because I've had opportunities like that and they've stuck after the pre-shadow, but also people leaving as well. Very good time, Mercury retrograde, and I really want to stress this a lot, to do intellectual work. A lot of people are I think afraid of doing it, and because they're so overwhelmed, there's so many, maybe the mind isn't working as well sometimes. But if you slow it down, if you really slow it down, if you go start making lists, to-do list, putting it on pen on paper, computer, whatever you're using, then it's a really freaking good time to understand things deeply. The ideas, thoughts, the information, actually you can process it on a much slower level, I would say, and that makes the work really freaking good. And most of my, let's say, best ideas come during Mercury retrogrades or pre-shadow, and then I have the time to do it in the shadow, retrograde period. And let's talk. I'll give you my, let's say, Taurus and Gemini, this specific manifestations as well, that are, let's say, I think important for you and or most of you. Thinking, reallocating, transferring money to different accounts. So this is going to be going on. What am I doing with my money? How do I invest? Where do I put my money? It's going to be on our minds. We're going to talk about it. We're going to be taking action. We're going to be, posting, or sorry, not posting, transferring to some account. We need to make an investment later on, maybe, or maybe we're taking money out of that account. This is going to happen back and forth there. Also, talking, speaking, communicate about rationing about foods and goods. What are we going to stock up on? How are we going to use our food resources? A lot of information exchange, and the thoughts it's because, remember guys, right now it's in the news constantly, shortages, how this W thing is affecting everything, people need to
Financial
reshift.
market also.
Sorry, yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
shocks to the financial market, whatever that's going up and down and left and right. Yeah.
Really expect the unexpected here. It's really hard to say exactly up or down with the eclipses and the Mercury retrograde. Usually down, I would say, if I look at all the energies here, I would say. But don't take this as financial advice. Do your own research, especially with investments. Rebudgeting, I think, is also a thing you need to do. Excel sheets, spreadsheets. You need to do that. Especially this retrograde. Now, some more communication with financial institutions, banks. Things can take longer. Documents need to be revisited. For example, you need to reconfirm your identity to a platform, web platform, or a bank, or something with documents and communicating with these. Maybe the positive side of this is some money being returned to you. Maybe some you even forgot about it, or maybe there's a debt. Somebody's indebted to you. It can come back right now, or during the retrograde period, actually. And if we're talking about the Gemini part of the equation, a lot of writing, speaking, blogs, internet matters, skill learning, teaching, webinars, books, ebooks, programming, sales, marketing, campaigns, social media, communication, siblings, teammates, workmates, neighbors. All of these things associated with these matters come to the surface. They need to be more efforts there, repetitions. Personally, I'm just sharing one of the things I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be going really deep into a product that I'm developing, and I'm going to make it good and perfect, and just it's going to need more efforts and going to need more repetition, and it's going to annoy me at times. And this is one of the things you need to be okay with, because it comes back and forth. Repetition. Oh my god, again I need to do it again. They didn't understand. Again, and it weighs on you. There's no, we're human. It's okay that it weighs, but remember in the back of your mind that it's going to be this type of repetition. Yeah, that's it.
I think on top of what Ian mentioned regarding rebalancing your financial portfolio and where to park your savings, which is Taurus, those transactions you need to let more time marinate and see the external circumstances, what there is, for you to take into consideration those conditions, market conditions. And also, when I think about Gemini and Taurus, is also the quality of your contacts as well. So we may be kissing goodbye to some people and welcoming new ones as well that align with our newer formed, what we value inside in terms of our context. What kind of people do we what people do we want around us? There's a lot of those situations as well.
Yeah. I want to give because something you said really triggered something inside me. Not in a bad way, good way, guys. It's something one of my, let's say, financial astrologer mentor people. One of the advice they gave me, and her name is Kate, and she has a site, Profit with the Planet, so go check that out. She's really good at financial astrologer. But she said something interesting to me about Mercury retrograde, and the actual sentence was, people tend to overpay for things during Mercury retrograde. And how this manifests is, something comes up pre-shadow. Maybe you need some new, kitchen appliance, whatever, something that like that. And now you don't have the time to do it during the pre-shadow. And now you're in retrograde. And now you have all this information, but the offers are kind of like, but you kind of need it. You think you need it right now. And then you tend to, buy the one that is maybe not the right one, that kind of like is too expensive, maybe doesn't do the work properly, or doesn't do it the way that you like to do it. So what I started to do, it happened to me with a freaking office chair. I just want to say this, freaking office chair, and I needed to freaking exchange it, and I had to change documents. It took so much energy. But the fact, or what needs to happen, is do the research for that appliance during the retrograde, and then after the shadow is, the after shadow is here, now the opportunities actually come your way. Maybe there's a sale, 50% off, you get that appliance, and they get the right appliance. So just be a little bit more patient.
Yeah, and also Taurus actually rules our core essentials like food and shelter. And so when you also combine the Gemini, which is decision making, maybe some of us are rethinking our rental contracts, for example, or how we actually do our groceries and all those things. Maybe there's because of shortage and over this Mercury retrograde, you're actually thinking about your spending patterns, which is very much Gemini and Taurus energy combined. And so it's like, how do you make your dollar stretch a little bit further? Maybe that's what's on a lot of our minds, because, as we know, the CPI is like indicative of like our core goods, like the price just keep going up and up and up. So over this Mercury retrograde, and also in the background, the eclipses taking place, there'll be a lot of this kind of considerations. Maybe we just need to get more creative over this Mercury retrograde, because it can be a pretty creative time when Mercury goes retrograde. And for the next part, I'd just like to talk about the aspects of Mercury throughout this Mercury retrograde period, to kind of paint for you like the, how the ebbs and flows actually move forward for us coming up. So this Mercury retrograde in Gemini and Taurus will take place. The actual retrograde will be from May 10th all the way to June 3rd. And this is the second Mercury retrograde of 2022. So we'll start off this Mercury retrograde in early Gemini on May 10th. That's when it will go backwards. And initially in the beginning, transportation, communication, relationship, getting understood, via the other, all those will be initially pretty difficult when Mercury starts going retrograde. And then all the typical problems such as transportation and technology are highly emphasized with this Mercury retrograde, since it starts in its home sign of Gemini. And when Mercury actually moves back into Taurus, and this will be happening on May 22nd, this actually brings the themes of like core essentials, money, values, all these into the picture. But before this, the messenger planet, which is Mercury here, actually makes a sextile with Jupiter on May 19th, and Jupiter will be in Aries. We will talk about that in the next section. And they will also form like a supportive sextile aspect when transit Mercury will be freshly out of the shadow degrees. And this will happen right at the end of Gemini season. So third week of June will be where Mercury and Jupiter will sextile again. So this is rather auspicious in terms of the aspect, since it's a sextile. This actually brings forth some kind of good energy to this retrograde. And you will find that over this Mercury retrograde, ideas will be more expansive because of the Jupiterian expanding effect. And you will find that no obstacle or course of action will be too grand. But since Jupiter is in Aries, we might be overestimating our capabilities as a result as well. So take note of that. I would say that the next couple of weeks should be kind of like a planning stage rather than actually carrying out of plans. If you want to carry out your plans, I would wait until like end of Gemini season, which is around third week of June, because that's where the shadow degrees will be all covered by transit Mercury. It will be not going back to those degrees. So brash actions, I would say, don't typically pan out during this Mercury retrograde because of this sextile with Jupiter as well. So don't be feeling like too impatient, or you need to just charge and like, go all like, warrior face. Sometimes you need to let things marinate a bit longer and maybe like do the planning stage a bit more. And so when Mercury forms like a cazimi with the sun, this will happen on May 21st, actually, at the critical 0-degree mark of Gemini. And 0 degrees of Gemini is also sitting on top of this, actually, I would say unfortunate fixed star, which is known as the Pleiades, or another term is called alcone, Alcyone. And this unfortunate fixed star is really about what are we not seeing? What are we not willing to see or not able to see? Or it's a blind spot for us. Maybe it's time over this Mercury retrograde to kind of let things kind of like sit back for a moment, kick back one gear, and let external circumstances provide us with the impetus to reflect more. I mean, that's one of the Mercury retrograde meanings as well, to reflect. And when Sun and Mercury also form that cazimi at 0 degrees, this is also like a very paramount time, I would say, to examine our relationships to money and material things, because Mercury will after that dip back into Taurus. And I think the retrograde will pose a very tough question for all of us, at least some of us, which is like, do you value what you spend your money on? And people who are frivolous spenders will be in for a rude awakening with this one, I would say, this particular Mercury retrograde. But however, this Mercury retrograde actually presents the right opportunity to review our budgets, and also can inspire some to spend our money in more thoughtful and sustainable ways as well, which is Taurus. And anyone who is going through this kind of, or have this habit of over-attachment to money or material possessions, issues will be flagged up surrounding that over this Mercury retrograde. And if we go later to a couple of days later, Mercury actually trines Pluto from May 24th to May 27th. And under this aspect, we'll be actually be asked to connect with our sense of self-worth. And this can really represent like a deep look at the root of self-doubt and sabotage. Where have we shortchanged ourselves? And that comes along with the ways to release this kind of behaviors in a lighthearted and grounded manner, because it's an earth trine we're talking about. And over this Mercury retrograde, a kind of metamorphosis will actually take place on a very fundamental level that might actually shake us to the core. And this Mercury retrograde actually comes to a close on June 3rd in late degrees of Taurus. And when that is so, Mercury actually forms a square to Saturn, while at the same time forms a sextile to enchanting or delusional Neptune. So when the Mercury stations direct, as Mercury makes that aspect to Saturn via square and sextile to that Neptune, we may need to implement some more discipline while letting our imaginations probably run a bit wild of what can be for us looking into the future. It's like that visionary energy, that Neptunian thing. And you may actually seek inspiration when Mercury stations direct around that period, because ideas could become grounded into your reality it just takes hard work and fortitude to ground it and make it happen. So I think that's the summary of what this Mercury retrograde is about in terms of aspects. Do you have anything to add, Ian?
I have one more thing. One
Yeah.
more kind of like overall thing is, and this one is more to do with the Taurus part. And I think Tony mentioned a very important thing about self-worth. And the thing about Mercury retrograde in Taurus as well is it's not only, or it's also the very, very practical worth that we put on ourselves on the marketplace. So, it can mean prices of your products, goods, or services, or time you charge for your hour. All of these kind of very, very left brain, more earthly, practical things, you need to reevaluate and look, am I charging enough? Am I charging too much? Am I charging too little? Which one it is, and how can I offer actually more worth or more, positive things to humans. So actually my, let's say that worth raises on the marketplace. So these are also some of the things you need to be reassessing. And even if you have a job, it still comes up or can come up that, like, is the compensation that I'm getting, equal to what I'm putting in? Again, you need to weigh it, you need to go deeper, you need to understand what you're actually bringing to the plate. And after shadow, maybe some renegotiation of those contracts. Yeah.
And I probably missed out this part. One last thing, because this transit Mercury will station direct in late degrees of Taurus, it will actually activate the 19 November 2021 partial lunar eclipse at 27 of Taurus, because Mercury will be stationing direct at 26 of Taurus for this Mercury retrograde. So it will re-trigger that lunar eclipse again. So I will actually attribute a lot of our prices increasing, all those things, starting from the lunar eclipse back then in November of 2021. So it will bring themes of that to the forefront on a mundane level. So we'll be basically rebalancing our core essential needs basing on our current purchasing power, whatever that's left, post-inflation. And I would even go on to say that some of us may even like decide to change jobs, because our value systems have just kind of like go through that rewiring, or that's that kind of revamping energy with that Mercury aspecting Pluto, then via trine, and then squaring Saturn, and then like sextiling Neptune. Yeah, all those things.
Great.
So do you want to move towards the next section regarding Mercury, well, this time Jupiter ingressing into Aries? Take it away, Ian.
Yeah, I gotta say, I was anticipating more of this, let's say, before the W situation, because I think on a personal level, I want to stress this a lot, because there's a difference how things happen and manifest on an overall level and a personal level, because all shit can go down on planet Earth, but there's a person who's like, yeah, things are working for them in their personal life. It's happening. And this can be very, very, very well you, for example, if you have something in fire signs like I do. And I have a bit of a grand trine there in the fire sign, so I'm anticipating it personally for Jupiter to bring me some relief, because it's been quite a heavy couple of years. But from a general perspective, and you can understand the exchange or change of my tone of voice, it will go into the sign of Jupiter, the planet of expansion. Remember, guys, very important, is going into the sign of, well, conflict, war, aggression. So from a grand perspective, or the bigger perspective, I'm a little bit concerned, and I do see these things expanding. Now, I dissected my personal coverage of this event again into these more, let's say, negative manifestations this time, and more positive manifestation. Obviously, remember, people, guys, this is my judgment, and an event that is seemingly positive or negative, it can change very quickly. Let's start with the negative ones, and I will end with the positive ones. I think it's a little bit better for this. So I said already, more aggression, more conflict, more arguments. These are going to happen regardless. War can be expanded throughout all that because there's so much of that energy going around. So the conflict we have in the Europe right now can be expanded, most likely will, and I don't right now see a very, very peaceful resolution to this. Unfortunately, this is the bad news. Now, thanks to that, war industry, making war equipment will increase. Military equipment business associated with that will expand and grow. People will spend more on that. I already, in my homeland now, far away, people, because we had a lot of Ukrainians came to us as refugees from the war. They started buying up the military equipment that was on sale and sending it back to their, compatriots in Ukraine. So you can understand this is kind of like a positive and negative thing, but that will increase, that will continue. So, the people who own those types of businesses, for them it's good, in the grand scheme of things, I would put a negative stamp on that. So war industry equipment, even war, military, physical, martial arts training things will expand and will get more attention, and people just will need it more, and we'll go into that direction. So again, positive, negative. Cuts, injuries can increase, bruises definitely will increase there. Recklessness, abrupt behavior, rash behavior. Remember, guys, it's Aries. Aries, let's say the negative side of Aries is very, very quick, very rash, just doesn't think at all, and just, I need to get it done now and just do it now. Through that, like I said, the cuts, bruises, reckless behavior. If you see somebody, maybe even driving, very simple example, especially Mercury retrograde, Jupiter going into Aries, reckless driving, just wild. Root chakra is a bit overstimulated, and for me, usually that means the desires come from a little bit of a lower place. So check your desires. Where are these desires coming from, and what are you actually desiring? Blood will boil easily. Again, more of that aggressiveness and impulsiveness. Impulsive, again, Aries, again, our own, again, it doesn't always have to be that you're looking or going outside. Your own impulsiveness will also be increased. Like, oh my God, I need to get it done right now, or get something right now. Dial it down, and I will immediately start going into the positive ones because there are. Aries energy isn't all bad, competition will increase. Only me type of mentality can increase. Fighting with others increases. Throwing tantrums can increase. Military operations, already mentioned. Inflammations. So this is one big thing. I think you need to, depending on a little bit where you are, but it can, it doesn't, how do I put this? If you go to the pharmacy and get some, things to dial down inflammation, it's not too big of an expense. Have that in the back of your mind. This can increase, maybe it's outside of the skin, maybe it's a bruise, cut, get some inflammation in it, need to be aware of that. Violence, I think this is maybe the hardest thing to talk about, but Jupiter in Aries can increase a lot of violence, even with sharp objects. I don't want to talk about too much, but like you know, I think Donny already mentioned in the last video, you know, the knife attacks already increased, and now we got and actually after that video, I need to say this to you, Donny. Somebody also wrote to me, I think in my comments or email, they said that they were in, you know, where they were in the location, they were already the news of these knife attacks really increased. And so, you know, hard to say what to exactly do here. If you know basic self-defense, good, you know, really good actually. Should you avoid dark places and late at night weird places? I think yes. I think yes. So, you know, be careful. Be as careful as you can with this. Let's go now to the positives. I have positives as well. So the positive sides of Aries that will also receive a boost, and you will feel it in your personal lives, and you will see it happening outside. And remember, when I say these things, positive sides, it's really, you know, potent to use these in your. You can use the energy. Remember, guys, you can really use the energy. What can you use with Jupiter in Aries? The desire to initiate and the courage to initiate and start new things will come more, and you will have that more, just like the, you know, the warrior with the sword. And it doesn't have to be always a fighting sword. It can be a creating, making things, entrepreneur type sword. Or if you're an employee, you know, you will start to do more things within the company. You have the courage, you have the initiative to start those things. So please use that. So generally, more energy, more physical energy to be used. And remember, this needs to be expressed. This needs to be used. Otherwise, again, it's easier to drift into those negative spaces of the Aries, you know, that I said already. Building more muscle, fitness, easier to do, definitely. The desire to do more fitness, again, a good way, again, like martial arts, in my opinion, doing fitness work, you know, doing physical exercise, really good with Jupiter in Aries, and to sometimes even ground, because you know, you can't always start new businesses always, you know. It gets crazy, but you know, if you have some sort of exercise routine, martial arts routine, really good to ground this energy. Short spurts of higher energy become very frequent. This is one thing with Aries energy that is really important to understand. You need to navigate these energies, because Aries, it can't go very long with this high energy vibe, but it can do short spurts of energy quickly, and then you take a break, and again, break again. Use that. So also, metal, fitness, engineering, construction, sports, these industries should receive a boost with the Jupiter in Aries. Negative side, maybe surgeons will have more work as well, unfortunately. I just want to tell a story, because this was a really interesting short story. I was watching an Estonian surgeon talk to a boss about the war, because he went to help the Estonians and other NATO members during the Afghanistan conflict. And you know, you can think about whatever you want to think about the conflict and the interest involved, but I'm sharing the story of the surgeon doing the work here. And they had so much, you know, intensity there. They were working, you know, 24-hour days, constantly cutting people, you know, trying to save these people. There's blood everywhere. And one of the key things he said that really sparked my curiosity and interest is like, you have to have a sense of humor during these dark times, and you need to go into those, maybe, you know, black sense of humor. And this is what they actually used. You know, the people who were cutting, you know, seeing death all the time, they used a sense of humor. They make jokes. They still were able to make jokes, and they got through those difficult times. Now, I'm not saying you should only just make fun of everything, but a sense of humor during dark times is really important. And in my opinion, we're just, you know, this year is going to need a lot of it. Okay, so easier to cut things from your life. You know, being very direct. Being direct is really good with Aries energy, and you're going to have more of it, and you can use it. More courage in people, and you know, the desire to be the warrior. Sexual energy increases definitely. So I would urge you to be careful with how you use it and with who you use it. Uh, God. Movement increases. Easier to get in shape. Ambition increases definitely. Desire to be the first. Again, if you're going too much into the ambition and desire to be first, again can drift into the negative side. I would look into it. I think one of the things I really like with Aries is it's not only about you and you being the first. It's the fact that very very often Aries has so much initiative energy. They have the capacity and capability to ignite others with that energy and with that excitability. So use that to take others with you. Not only me, but take others with you, initiate, help others to climb those mountains with you. Independent action increases. Search and desire for more adrenaline. I mean, that's negative and positive, I'd say. Be careful. Entrepreneurship receives a boost. Startup companies, definitely more will come up, and I think that's it for me, for now at least.
I think on my side, I'll be covering more regarding like the key dates, because as we mentioned earlier in the previous section regarding Mercury retrograde, Mercury when transit Mercury is just starting freshly into its retrograde phase, it will sextile transit Jupiter, which will ingress into Aries. And transit Jupiter actually ingresses into Aries on May 10th or 11th, depending on where you are of this year. And it will actually stay in the sign of Aries until very close to Halloween. I think it's on the 28th of October of this year. After that, Jupiter will, by transit, dip back into late Pisces and stay down there for a little bit of time. And then just before Christmas, on 20th of December, we will see transit Jupiter re-enter Aries again. And this time, when transit Jupiter re-enters Aries, end of this year, transit Jupiter will actually move all the way past Aries and will exit Aries on May 16th of next year. And it will not come back to Aries ever again, because the Jupiter retrograde that's next year actually happens fully in Taurus. So we will have this last pass of transit Jupiter in Aries from the end of this year all the way till May 16th of next year. So starting in 2022, when transit Jupiter actually initially dips into Aries, we may expect to see like a massive growth in everything that has to do with self-sufficiency, self-dependency, things to do with the self. So everything that expands your knowledge in order for you to become more autonomous or independent, like what Ian said, to stand on your own 2 feet, to be more entrepreneurial, start your own business, that is, and to launch that new product or service that you've been thinking of doing. I would say that transit Jupiter in Aries will be a very good time for a launch of sorts. And it's like a heads up as well to seek out knowledge, new knowledge, that is, because Jupiter has that expansive, like inclusive energy, new teachings and learnings for yourself, to know more about yourself. And there's also enhanced likelihood that we are going to see more violent eruptions, like what Ian also mentioned. But I personally wouldn't be surprised if that happens if we are not able to find ways to express that anger collectively, or collective frustration and impatience for that matter. So people can be more jumpy when Jupiter is in Aries and just roaring to go, you know what I mean? And these are all the energies that we may be dealing with, as there may be like fighting for free speech also, and also the against of censorship. Because when I think about Aries, it's all about the validation of the I am principle, which is Aries, which is to be seen. So people definitely want to be, people's opinions, which is Jupiter, want to be more made known aggressively, Aries. And these might be some of the bigger things that we might see, because if I think about the ruler of Aries, which is Mars, when Jupiter actually ingresses into Aries, when Jupiter actually ingresses into Aries, Jupiter's ruler, which is Mars, will be in Pisces. And then later on this year, Mars will be retrograde in Gemini, squaring Neptune 3 times. So the overall flavor of this Jupiter in Aries energy, how do I put this? I do see this coming 12 months as a kind of period for technological advancements on one hand, of new gadgets, new phones, new ways in managing our currency, for example, or our cryptocurrency. There is also like the underlying theme of CBDC, central bank digital currency, all those things with this Jupiter in Aries energy that it may help to manifest that more and more and more and anchor that more into our reality. So I personally think that we are going to see like a whole plethora of new ways of exchanging energy, because Aries actually rules the head. So I am actually anticipating to see like industries that involve the brain, the head, or the senses to bloom as well. This can actually include virtual reality, because of that Mars energy connected to Neptune in that way, which is virtual reality. And we may also be going to observe like some kind of growth with anything to do with military and its weapons, like what Ian mentioned. And when I think about Mars's transit in connection to Neptune for extended periods of time, for the main bulk when Jupiter is in a sign of Aries, I can't help but also mention that we may be looking at subtle mind energy manipulations, tactics going on with this Jupiter in Aries transit that can make us more vulnerable, confused, or unfocused. Or maybe there's a lot of propaganda going on. And like what Ian also mentioned regarding like Ukrainians being in Estonia, buying firearms or military stuff, shipping back to Ukraine to protect their country, there's very much that Martian energy that's going to conjunct Neptune, which can talk about refugees. And subsequently that Mars will square Neptune later this year 3 times for extended period of time. So there's a lot regarding like refugees, defending their homeland, you know what I mean? Like all those kind of themes keep coming up. And there may be even more like economic refugees coming up as well, in which I'll get back to that a bit later. Because alternatively, this background energy of Jupiter's ruler, which is Mars, what it's doing in the sky, can also imply the rerouting of natural gas pipelines. It links back to the Neptune energy in certain continents such as Europe, and also the commissioning too of building new deep sea pipelines in order to cover more neighboring countries within Europe. Since Neptune and the sign of Gemini are being tied into the Jupiter in Aries transit story, I also can't help to think that there may be some kind of gas or cyber-related attacks that may be coming up as well. But on another note, to put things in a more positive light, I've also looked into the field of esoteric astrology, and the esoteric planetary ruler of the sign of Aries is actually Mercury, where our higher self is reached through inspiring others through thought and speech, which is the mercurial function. So in other words, instead of using the Jupiterian energy to just bomb and unalive each other, or engage in like cyber attacks or warfares, which are the more literal or lower vibration of how Jupiter in Aries can manifest. We can actually use our intellectual energy to create a new earth that feeds everyone, that teaches people to become self-sufficient, to become strong in yourself, to find your purpose in your unique path, to be bold and brave for the brand new world that awaits us, all those things. So in essence, Jupiter in Aries actually bestows us that self-confidence to begin the things that we might be afraid, at least initially, of doing. But to do them anyways, to take that chance, which is Jupiter. So whatever that you've been procrastinating about, Jupiter in Aries actually asks you to take some steps. And just like the brand Nike suggests, just do it.
I just want to say amen to that, and beautifully said and beautifully spoken. And guys, if we can, at least on a personal level, do what Donny just said, I think we at least in smaller communities, smaller circles, we can start creating this new earth that is so much spoken, and I have personally seen. Yay!
And this may also be like the pop-up of more socially conscious enterprises as well. I also looked into the harmonic activation by sign, because I looked into transit Jupiter and Saturn, where they are by signs in tropical zodiac sign. And I map out what is the sign that harmonically is triggered by both Saturn and Jupiter, because those are the more collective energies that we will be looking into. So when transit Jupiter enters Aries while Saturn is still in the sign of Aquarius transiting, the sign of Leo gets triggered while transit Jupiter is in Aries. And I've looked deeper into what in the sky is actually heavily featuring the sign of Leo moving forward, because that will kind of paint like the collective picture for us. I've looked into the nodal axis of planets. Now, we usually talk about the nodal axis as the lunar nodes, but I also look into the other planets as well. And the north node of Neptune is transiting right now very slowly in the sign of Leo. So in other words, I am indirectly implying that we might be in for a very Neptunian time, while Jupiter is transiting in Aries, this to next year, the two periods I mentioned, while Saturn is still transiting in Aquarius. So just to name a few, like higher octane of creative expression for Neptune and destructive expression of Neptune. For the creative side, we've got, imaginative aspects of us will skyrocket. We will be feeling more inspired, at the same time be more sensitive and compassionate, and also idealistic as well. And there'll be more chance for us to, while Jupiter is in Aries, to perhaps ground more spiritual energies within us in order to become more visionary for our future that awaits us. But at the same time, the destructive aspects of that transit north node of Neptune in a sign of Leo there can be more chaos and perverse stuff going on. We may be in for some kind of deception. Things can become destabilized or subversive. If you don't handle the energy properly, it can also lead to some kind of self-destructive escapism and also evasion of responsibility. And we may also become more delusional. So which side are you on? I'll leave it to you. And since we're talking about the sign of Leo, that will be enhanced in the coming months while transit Jupiter will be in Aries. Countries like Pakistan, Singapore, India has a stellium in Leo. South Korea also has a stellium in Leo. Ukraine has also stellium in Leo. Russia has got a Leo ascendant. Bhutan has got a Leo stellium, opposite moon in Aquarius. Bolivia has got Sun, Jupiter in Leo in the 4th house of homeland. Peru also has a Leo stellium. And the Central African Republic has got Sun, Uranus conjunction in Leo, close to the 4th house cusp homeland as well. So these countries I just mentioned will be what I'll be looking for in terms of developments. Maybe there's more news coming from those places, while Jupiter is transiting in Aries. So that's for that part. Now let's move on to the full moon in the middle of May of this year at 25 degrees 17 minutes of Scorpio, shall we? Do you want to like display the transit chart for this?
Sure. I think it's want to say that like I'm pretty like kind of like a person who is okay with going through things and pretty deep, I would say. Not tooting my own horn too much, but when I was looking at this freaking eclipse, I was like, I'm not looking forward to this at all.
Yeah, let the audience look at what they're in store for.
Let's see what we can muster up from this.
Okay. Do you want to just only show the chart without the tables?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this total lunar eclipse came from a new moon that started back on 15th of November 2020, because back then there was a new moon around the degree of this eclipse point in late Scorpio. So if you have certain planets in late Scorpio that's triggered by the new moon back then, that means the late degrees of Scorpio, this may be like an 18-month development of the energies leading up to this point of this total lunar eclipse. And the main aspect that I want to touch on is that that total lunar eclipse squaring Vesta and also Saturn, particularly Saturn, because it's just only 1 degree away from exactly squaring. And over this total lunar eclipse, you may kind of have the tendency to conserve your energy and to desire fewer and deeper involvements. So to become more frugal, hopefully, in the backs of that Mercury retrograde in Taurus and Gemini. And you may be more vitalized, I would say, with simplicity. Saturn can also be a very spiritual planet as well. Also by spirituality for that matter. Particularly, Saturn is in the sign of the sky gods, which is Aquarius. Maybe you need to organize your involvements a bit better. And over this total lunar eclipse, you may also assimilate information coming from the subconscious more slowly, because Saturn does delay stuff or slows things down. Saturn is still direct, so that's the only saving grace. Thank God it's not retrograde. And you tend to delve more deeply into ideas. Because I feel that with this square, this total lunar eclipse squaring Saturn, it is really also providing us the opportunity to search for the deeper meanings inherent in everything. Can we actually see the pattern, which is Aquarius, in all that is in our physical reality, what's going on in the world, which is that, Saturn square nodes. And, but I would say that at worst, or the lower vibrational energy, this total lunar eclipse can really be bringing up the fear, which is Saturn. Maybe we are afraid of making mistakes or of failing. And hence it just kind of holds us back. And we also may be overtly cautious. So it's that continuation of April's energy of cautious optimism that is also brought up to the surface. Other things that may be not so desirable, it may also bring up like inner inhibitions or repressions. For some people, it may even be depression and loneliness as well. or separation from the community because of the square influence. There may be some form of renunciation or difficulties in the relationship with the opposite sex as well, which may come up. And collectively, I think we are also feeling this energy of joint and shared suffering of some sorts. And in some personal cases, I've also seen Saturn square nodes whereby perhaps also over this total lunar eclipse, the divorce rates may also go up. Yeah, something pertaining to that. And if I were to add Vesta, which is right beside Saturn, into the picture, this really talks about the global supply chain crunch that's persisting, driving sustained higher prices up and up and up, really eroding our purchasing or spending power helplessly. And that's on top of the Mercury retrograde happening in Taurus and Gemini in the background as well. That's captured over here in the eclipse chart. And one important thing is that there's this thing called the ambivalent triangle. Because when I look at that eclipse point, we see that Mars and Neptune are forming trine and sextile to their opposition. And when we talk about ambivalence triangle, the planets that's forming the trine and sextile are so-called the escape planets. Both planets are conjunct in late degrees of Pisces, where Jupiter and Neptune actually were conjunct. So Mars, by transit, is activating that point again, indirectly. And what this can mean is that this can literally mean more economic refugees, social chaos and unrest around the world from countries encountering financial or debt stresses from all corners. And I'm talking about, I think we all have, those who read the news more will have known that countries like Sri Lanka, Lebanon, Nepal, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Turkey, and across Africa, etc., all those places are being hit very badly by that. With them approaching the International Monetary Fund to ease the country's broken debt burdens, which is that Taurus and Scorpio axis, which forms the eclipse point. But however, on a more esoteric or metaphysical level, we may see what's going on in the 3D or third dimensional realm with currency manipulation, destabilization of economies financially. We may view that as much as relevant as it is to us, a form of psychic or spiritual warfare as well, which may actually make us be more aware of and mobilize us initiatively to become a hero figure, to take the initiative to extend help to others in need from a sense of spiritual obligation and compassion, which is that Mars and Neptune in Pisces. Besides that conjunction being refugees as well. But over this total lunar eclipse, I would say imagination can also be heightened and also excited, which can be used constructively or destructively, because Pisces can go either way, really. And so I would say grounding techniques around this eclipse in the background of a Mercury retrograde is very much advised and recommended. So if you have your go-to grounding crystals, or crystals to give you more mental clarity, please do. And some may actually prefer to engage in magical practices because Pisces can rule magic in order to bring forth an upcoming vision for yourself. You may also carry out such magical practices to kind of provide you with the to-do list in order to navigate the current landscape, which you can follow through with consciously guided action, rather than just sitting back and be all inert with confusion and go into like, oh, you know, I'm such a victim of circumstances, that kind of mindset. So other things that I have come up with is that Saturn and Vesta, when they're together, literally means warmth within the four walls. Vesta is the fireplace, which gives the warmth, and Saturn is the four walls of your house. And when it's squaring the eclipse point, this can be, it's very hard for people to stay warm within their four walls. And this can be very much linked to the supply shortages of energy sources such as coal or natural gas on a global level. And we are also being nudged also towards personal, financial, or resource management with more self-discipline. That's what Saturn is about, on top of, together with Vesta. What to keep, what to let go, what to close, what to tear down in our life structures in order to economize and stabilize the financial scenario around you. And it's also talking about diversification and decentralization of personal wealth and assets to weather the storm that's ahead of us. Because besides this eclipse 6 months later, I think in November, we're going to have another total lunar eclipse conjunct Uranus in Taurus. So this is just like the taster of things. And so at this point in the lunar eclipse, we may be decentralizing our personal wealth and assets to really what do you call that, to survive the extended storm that's ahead of us. But having said that, this may actually cause delays in achieving personal purpose from being thrown off guard from your path, because any planet that's squaring the nodes it can be like a weird little, because it's at the bend of the nodes. So this can kind of throw you off kilter or balance. Some of us may actually use this Saturn square, the eclipse point and the nodes, to separate from consensus reality, to go our own way, locate our tribe or community, in order to become more autonomous and independent resource-wise. There can also be issues pertaining to allocated resources pertaining to the care for the elderly as well, because of Saturn and Vesta. So it could be governments rebalancing their budget and allocating less for elderly care. And also retirement pension funds, which is Saturn in Aquarius energy as well. Not to mention that Uranus is pretty close by this total lunar eclipse. So I'm expecting also a lot of market volatility that may actually wipe out a lot of people's pension funds in which they invest in the stock market, for that matter. And if I were to tie in the nodal axis on a mundane level, this also can be Russia calling for integration of the BRICS, BRICS. When I say BRICS, it's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and also South Africa, in terms of payment systems to present a competing system that would enable them to operate outside the world of economic sanctions, which is Saturn in Aquarius, that have been applied against them from all the other developed nations. One thing I find that is very interesting is that there has been a lot of news pertaining to mysterious fires in food facilities in the US particularly. The strange trend of food processing plant fires is now up to 16, and it just keep on going up. I think the latest one is that there's a small plane that just crashed into a General Mills food processing plant in Georgia on 21st of April of this year. And the trend actually started with that partial lunar eclipse in mid-November 2021 at 27 Taurus. And look where the eclipse point, this one is at 25 of Scorpio, is exactly opposing each other. And that's where the increase in the numbers of this kind of destruction occur. And so there's a lot of uncertainty over supplies, has pushed many countries to hoard food supplies, or countries may sharply reduce exporting their locally grown produce or resources in anticipation for a global food crisis this year, well into next year. And if you think about that, Saturn and Vesta conjunction squaring the nodes in the signs of Taurus and Scorpio, which is the resource axis, this very much talks about physical processing containers or facilities interconnected with the global food supply distribution and allocation chain, essentially being torn down, irrevocably destroyed, or shut down because of certain things. And not to mention that Uranus and the sign of Aquarius are talking about planes. And what happened on 21st April of 2022? A plane crashed into a food processing plant. Very much that, that square over there. And not to mention that liquid natural gas. So this time I'm going to talk more about the Neptune and Mars conjunction, trining and sextiling that eclipse point. Liquid natural gas and coal is now too expensive for Pakistan. About 20% of their power generation capacity is now offline. Other countries are on a similar trajectory. And the countries I'm talking about are Turkey, Bangladesh, and Lebanon. And what I find really interesting is that all these countries are starting to ration out stuff. And rationing is also that Saturn in Aquarius energy, which is squaring that eclipse point and the nodes. So you can see how all these things are coming into the picture in terms of the mundane or collective manifestation. And the countries I just mentioned, are pretty Scorpionic countries. And why do I say that? Because Scorpio rules over the sign of Islam. And Islam is the majority religion that originates from the deserts on one hand, but is what there's common thread that ties in all those countries I mentioned just slightly earlier. Not to mention, on the day of this upcoming total lunar eclipse, Sweden and Finland will be going through with joining NATO on the day of this total lunar eclipse, which I find it fascinating. And I went to just have a little dabble into Finland's chart and also Sweden's chart. On the day of this total lunar eclipse, the eclipse point is actually aspecting Finland's Ceres, asteroid Ceres, via conjunction. Is also trining Finland's Chiron Vesta conjunction in Pisces. And it is also squaring Finland's Uranus, which talks about alliance and friends, hence NATO. And how about Sweden? Sweden's national chart. This eclipse point will be trining Sweden's moon, quincunx the sun sign of Sweden. And last but not least, it trines the seventh house cusp of Sweden's national chart. So this can be some kind of contractual obligation because they're not feeling actually secure about their country, and is to also protect their homeland. The theme just really is spanning across both Finland's and Sweden's country charts. So do you have any closing statements for this eclipse?
I have a few.
Yes.
Let's say I focused a little bit more on the personal effects that we might go through as human beings. And I'll again give you a little bit of a rapid fire of what will, what you can do, what are maybe the positive ones, what are the maybe negative ones, manifestations as well. So let's, I guess, let's start again with the negative ones. So we have a little bit of during the end of this coverage, we have a bit of a easier way out of it. So, like Donny said, there is a pretty hard aspect there going on. So for me, I translate to definitely an emotional time where the tendency to suppress one's emotions and feelings is high. So how it can look like is you get a reaction, get a feeling, but you suppress it down. But the thing about, especially I would say lunar, full moon, lunar eclipses is it's very hard to keep it down. Even if there's a suppression, it will just like Donny showed there, it will just explode. But the tendency to want to do it leading up to it is there. So be aware of that. A lot of emotional reactions towards others, manipulation and control instead of emotional mastery. Emotions become too much. So there's so much going on deep down, it can boil up again. Jealousy, suspicion, deep fears come up to the surface to be cleared and to come out into the open to be healed. So I wrote this one under both negative and positive. So the actual process of this is quite hard and difficult, but the actual result, which is the transformational Scorpio energy, is the phoenix that transformed you or us as a species as well. So because we're all going through it, some more subconsciously, some more consciously, the change or the let's say the potential to be transformed as a species is here, but I think most likely it will be through some hardships. So trauma reactions, getting lost in pain. Now, having to choose between internal and outer desires, letting go of something, receiving something. It's like we really need to balance these, like these extremes of material, internal. What do we want? What do we actually desire? What do we can get? These themes will come out into the open. Now, shocks to the financial system. I think Donny already mentioned that, and I don't know if it's even a surprise if you've been following a little bit of astrology, but we might need to still say it. Acts of jealousy. So what I mean by this is like even following others, being obsessed with other people, and I think it's even because it's so much to do with fears. This lunar eclipse for me, it's an important place to look at what is the reality of the situation. What are the deeper fears? Are these deeper fears based in some sort of reality? The line between reality and what we can imagine here. I just want to a little bit urge you that the fears can come up from such a deep space that yes, they might have a little bit of a truth to them, but you might be over twisting it so much that you need to, again, like Donny said, grounding practices. Really important during this to see and to shift yourself through. Am I being really scared of something that isn't there, or am I really truthful? Is the fear something I really need to look at? Things can seem quite bleak because of that heaviness, personally and globally, societally. Wanting to hold on to, grab to old patterns. So this is a lot of this eclipse for me is about releasing those patterns, and this will continue. Like for me, the intensity of this, like very intense, I would say 6 months after the initial full moon lunar eclipse. Of course, it can carry a little bit longer, a little bit shorter on some occasions, but it's a lot about letting go, a lot about excreting. I think we talked about it in the last in our last video about the south node being in also Scorpio, and now we have the lunar eclipse here as well, which is a lot to do with letting go, but Scorpio and Saturn square wants to hold on. First hold on, okay, but remember we need to release and let go of these patterns as well. Why am I stressing this so much? Because I know how heavy, how deep, how intense, how you can get lost in all of that energy. So guys, please be prepared for this. And remember, again, in the back of your mind, I'm not supposed to hold on to these things. I'm supposed to let go and heal and transform to a higher place. Outer and internal emotional blockages coming up that prohibit us from creating out in the world. Internal ones, obviously, you can have more mastery over. External ones that come up from these VW situations. You need to find ways around them, and make new things and create new things, keeping these things in mind as well. So let's go into the positive after this heaviness. Again, I want to say it once more. Letting go of emotional hurts, past wounds, and painful traumas. This is one of the real big things about this eclipse for me. Thanks to that deeper connection to internal, deeper feelings and places within yourself. These places can offer us emotional empowerment and strength. Remember this. We can, consider we have still some Pisces residue as well, and then Scorpio can go into that victim mentality as well sometimes, not always. So coming out of those places and empowering ourselves emotionally, physically, materially as well. Letting go of controlling situations and people as well. This next one can be thought of as positive, negative. Things coming to light or finding out painful things from the past. Something you have been suppressing, something that has been tucked into your subconsciousness. These can come to the surface. Be prepared. Results, actually, this can, again, I think mostly positive results with resources coming from others. I mean, loans, taxes, finances, bank loans, for example, inheritance. But keep in mind the Saturn square here. So, all of those results, maybe keep your feet on the ground with these results. Deep insights into yourself, your own and other people's psyches. You can really use this energy. I like this. Actually, I like the Pluto sextile. I like, to some extent, I like the Neptune and Mars trine as well. That is helping us with that square. So there is an opportunity, a window to go deeper there for yourself and to see if you're working with others. Because guys, I want to say this. Whenever you transform something within yourself, let's say you're in this business, or maybe you're thinking about being in this business. Whenever you transform something within yourself, and this opportunity is here, for you it will be easier to help other people transform as well. So use this opportunity. Death of an older part of yourself that is no longer serving you. Piercing intuition and deep seeing. Wanting to be more in private space, because all of that transformation can really, and also Scorpio energy can really want us, or we want to get into that private space of wanting to be left alone a little bit there. I also wrote something here globally. Deep matters revealed about resources, or the situation about resources, let's say under the ground, coming to the surface, and really we understanding the severity of the situation as well. So again, I don't know, it's a positive, it's a bit of a double whammy. So I also wrote a couple of things for you guys to maybe use, like Donny already said. Grounding, very important with this. From me, dealing with Scorpio energy to you, practice sinking into your pain and trauma and then processing it. There is not a lot of things you need to do with feelings and emotions other than feeling it. But the trick here, guys, is to actually allow yourself to feel these things, because they're scary and painful, but you need to do it. I don't think there's really another chance or kind of way to wiggle around this with this eclipse here. The deeper you can go, the better. The more you can release, the better. And something to check what is happening to you. Am I really, or a question, am I really experiencing this? Or is this my pain or fear talking? Especially important in personal relationships, but you know, if you're alone there, it can get, again, crazy feelings coming up, percolating, translates into fear in the mind. I think I really love a quote from Dune. I really recommend you go and check movie out, check the book out, Dune. Fear is the mind killer. Literally, this is if you're really deep in fear, it's really hard to make decisions. You really need to be okay and be powerful with fear. Be okay with processing fear. That's how you get stronger. Go deep into astrology, healing practices, release, cry, and let go.
There'll be a lot of fears being brought up here over this total lunar eclipse. And I just want to add to this total lunar eclipse that this lunar event will be visible in South and West Europe, South and West Asia, Africa, much of North America, South America, Pacific, Atlantic, Indian Ocean, and Antarctica. So, if you dare yourself, you may want to go out there and look at the blood moon eclipse yourself, because you'll be visible in most parts of the world. What's really interesting that when I was just looking at this chart is that there's this really rare aspect configuration that's called the cradle. And if you look at that opposition point, that defines the cradle. And if you see from Moon to Pluto is a sextile, from Pluto to Neptune and Mars is a sextile again, and then from Mars and Neptune, it forms a sextile to that nodal axis and the Sun. So the cradle has a lot to do with, like, what does the cradle hold? The baby, right? And the baby wants to feel safe and feel secure. When I see the cradle coming into formation with this total lunar eclipse, is actually asking us to let go of whatever that we believe that has worked for us in a lot of ways. Because it's almost like the baby is dropping out of the cradle. And with that total lunar eclipse in the sign of Scorpio, is really bringing up that cathartic emotional release. Hopefully we have that spiritual rebirth that comes along with it in order to be with more alignment with our true purpose coming up. And it also serves to illuminate what lights us up and sets us on that fire, while also asking us to honor our vulnerabilities as well. So I hope this total lunar eclipse will serve you well, because I do see a lot of, on one hand, with that square to Saturn, this can really mean that we may have to step away from consensus reality if we were to move out of our comfort zone, which is indicated by that cradle shape aspect configuration over this total lunar eclipse, in order to push us to find our tribe, our community. So I think this total lunar eclipse will be the impetus for us to really anchor more of the Aquarian age reality that we are coming forth. So it's not really so much about how much can I earn. It's about how much social impact I can affect people around me. That will be the mission statement moving forward. What's your take on that, Ian?
I'm loving it. I really hope you're true. Like it's true, and it will become the understanding and how we do things here on planet Earth. And if anything, I hope this one is like this eclipse is like the bigger beginning of this, and or we get the results of this, you know, full moon, more of the results of the situation.
I wouldn't lie, it's
Um,
freaking scary because it's Scorpio, right? Total lunar eclipse.
for me, that's the big thing, because whenever I see something, and again, guys, I just want to. This is not to mention, not to trigger anybody or trigger Scorpios. Whenever I see anything happening in Scorpio, this is intensity city. Every time. It's been like this globally. It's been like this in personal lives. It's just very much to handle, and we
Mm-hmm.
need to just be prepared for that. If we're a little bit even prepared, even if we're, you know, mentally in the back of our minds we remember this, it's a little bit easier to navigate the emotions, navigate the feelings, navigate the communication. Remember, we have a Mercury retrograde even during this, so
Yeah.
it's like wild, man. And
But you know
you
what?
know,
For people who want to break away from addictions, I'm loving this total lunar eclipse.
mostly agree. I'm a little bit wary of the Saturn. I'm a little bit
Well, the
wary of the
Saturn can
Saturn, but
really like, you know, partition Aquarius, partition off that side of you and get rid of that what's no longer serving you, Saturn. Leave that
sh-
behind.
shock you and punch you in the face, basically,
Well, I mean,
with the Uranus.
Saturn does give the pain, but the thing is that it's pain that leads you to really grow up and become the master, really. We can't forget that Saturn is the mastership planet as well.
It's extremely important to remember,
Yeah.
and it's a lot about emotional mastery here, I would say, personal level. So you have to have that, like what we've been saying, like emotional mastery, grounding, going deep. You need to get that going. You need to have that. Otherwise, very hard to master any addictions. Coming
And when
from
I
a person who is who I struggled a lot with addictions. When I started going into these emotional mastery parts, no need to do any of that bad stuff to yourself anymore. Remember that, guys.
and every time when I see that Scorpio and Aquarius squaring each other, this time is pretty exact. The imagery of a caterpillar pupaing into being free as a butterfly, the imagery is coming forth. So it's got that a lot of metamorphosis energy. And not to mention that um, Mars and Neptune are in supportive aspect to the eclipse point. So it really is rebirthing in a lot of ways that we never imagined collectively. Yeah.
The window to liberation and freedom and emotional mastery is here, and the opportunity, it's ours to use, I would say.
Mm. And I'm loving that Venus
Oh.
and Chiron together over that eclipse as well, because that's almost like the understanding of you're being looked after by the universe. You just have to trust.
I mean, if we, this
Yeah.
is one of the things I've been learning a lot lately, going
Yeah.
into that trust, and it's sometimes very
Pisces is
hard.
also to trust as well, right? It's to really surrender and trust a lot of things. Yeah.
And I remember one of the things I want to share this very short story, like what Donny just said, like surrendering and knowing you're taking care of the universe. Like the first time I heard it, I was like, "What the fuck are you talking to me?" This was like years ago. I think it was like maybe 8 7 years ago. A very long time ago. I heard it first, and somebody gave it to me. I was like, "What the fuck are you talking about? I've never been. I've always had this crisis. What are you talking about?" But then, as I sank into it, I was like, huh, actually, I'm still alive. I'm still breathing. I've always had the resources to some extent. I've, put in the efforts, the mind went on. And I started understanding that actually there is truth in it. But in order for us to deeply believe in it, for me, it's always we need to practice the belief. We need to sink into the trust. We need to see actual practical results coming into our lives, that the universal life is actually taking care of us. And having food on your table, having people close to you, whatever it is for you, for your mind, that is the proof. Look for that proof that I'm always be that maybe you're on this planet for 40, 50, 30, 60 years. You've always had, or always been taken care of. Already proof.
So a really powerful one. Now let's move on to the other lunation. So take it away, Ian.
Let's go to the new moon. And, when I was looking at this new moon, it was a strange thing. And I think we touched a little bit about this already, but I was getting really optimistic. I was like, oh my God, so optimistic. I was looking at, obviously the configurations, the aspects, and I was looking, oh my God, okay, so the lunation itself is happening in Jupiter terms, oh yes, already a little bit of more optimism. I was like, yeah. And, Jupiter, again, with a bit of a sextile going on here. Again, a little bit more optimistic. The only, we can say from a traditional perspective, from a modern perspective, we can bring in the other aspects that I don't particularly like, but I do like from a traditional perspective that even Saturn, sign-based, still a trine-ish going on here. Neptune square, okay, we have that. But important for us to also look at, the dispositor or the ruler of the actual event. And this is where I was like, because Mercury, guys, is retrograde. It's not doing too well. You can see by term or by sign. Saturn square, almost exact Saturn square to Mercury as well. So, and I was drifting in and out of this type of optimistic, positive, and at the same time, this fear that we already discussed while looking at this new moon. So for me, again, there is a certain type of optimism that is after this new moon is almost like inserted to us, or even during the new moon that is inserted to us. But it needs to be in a grounded way. It needs to be from a grounded space, and we need to look at also the practical reality of the situation. We can't go, just emotionally, just, yeah, I'm feeling good for a while. But the heaviness of the Saturn to Mercury, I think, will help us dial this one down. And I will now speak of, some of the, let's say, I will again do a rapid fire type of, I actually know one thing I want to mention still, the algol and the Mercury as well. So Mercury is conjunct more negatively associated fixed star of algol, that is, again, violence, again, these deeper things, aggressiveness, I would say, as well as algol. Because very often when, let's say, for example, when the moon is even with algol or some other planet, there's more aggressiveness associated with the planet or even outside. So for example, moon, people are emotionally more aggressive. And in this case, we have the Mercury, communication, driving. Be on the lookout for that. And, do your best not to go into that energy yourself. And what I mean by, just don't go crazy driving or don't say sharp, mean things to other people. The energy is unfortunately there here as well. Even car accidents I do see here, unfortunately, going, or the number going up with that. And that's I did again like a negative, more positive. This time I have more positive, guys. I have because the new moon is a little bit more optimistic. I have a lot more optimistic parts for you. So let's start with the negative ones. More accidents on the road, car accidents. Unfortunately, I do see here negative thoughts, negative thinking, negative outlook at times on things. Thoughts and mind in general can be on overdrive. Too many thoughts, too many messages, mind just like oversharing and gossip. I wrote that here as well. Weird thing about Mercury retrograde is, and during this new moon especially, anyway, you need to be careful of what you say and what you talk and what you discuss with others. But it's a tendency, because with the planet of communication, we have a new moon with the planet of communication ruling it. So it's a little bit easier to go into that gossipy, oversharing type of place. Don't, be mindful of what and with who you discuss things with. Um, Now, I mentioned a bunch of areas during the Mercury retrograde coverage. So, social media, blah, blah, blah. We already said, go back and re listen to that. I won't repeat it. But some of these projects, before leading up to the new moon, can leave, or they need to be really re-evaluated. The new beginning that is happening with those projects, it needs to usually leave something at least behind with those projects, and then the new beginning, the better beginning. And we have the support mostly here to have those new beginnings within those projects already. But it can mean before we're leading up to it, something leaves, and something leaving isn't always, the easiest thing. So we can see it as a negative, we can see it as a positive. Just remember that as well. And now let's go into more of the positive beginnings. So I like the general aspects, guys, here. So I want to preface this a little bit, because the energies, where you know where we are at as a society. So if I say this is a good new moon for new beginnings, is that it's okay at best. It's okay at best, because we have those supportive aspects. So you can start new things regarding Gemini matters mentioned in the previous segment where Mercury retrograde was covered. But keep in mind some of the heaviness as well when you start these new things, and especially new things in things already started. You may need to change something. May need to best way to say this: change something or start something anew where things have been already started before. I'll leave it at that. Really good to start publishing things that you've been working on during Mercury retrograde. Now, after this new moon, Mercury also goes direct. So all of these books, things we mentioned, good to start publishing them, bringing out them to the light after the third, fourth. This is where I like it to keep it. Before, I actually don't like it. I actually like to perfect them, remove what is unnecessary, and then start publishing them. All those social media stuff. Lots of business, communicating after the new moon, messages, messages, online messages, all of that will pick up. I also wrote down here, being cautiously optimistic. A small wave of optimism. When I was looking at it, I was really, because everything is so heavy right now. I was really doing my best to find at least something for you or for us to work with, and to find at least something, because guys, all of these crises are happening. Life doesn't stop. We need to move forward. We have businesses, we have things going on. As much as we can, we need to create and make better new things. Also, a lot of more traveling, movement, short trips going to happen definitely. Before leading up to it, releasing old thoughts and things we think about. The mind patterns, the mind overdrive. This is a time before the new moon to start releasing these patterns as well. And I really like this Gemini new moon actually for new ideas and information coming in. This is almost like, because there's a lot of good aspects going around here, guys, to catch those ideas, to really catch those or that information, write it down, journal. I think really good exercise anyway, to journal, to write down during this new moon and leading up to it. And even to, because what we need during a Gemini moon, or if you have Gemini moon natally, we really need to talk it out. What I've experienced very often with people who have natally Gemini moon, when they talk it out, when they get it out of their system, when they write it out, things start to resolve themselves. And now we can use this, all of us. We don't have to have natally new moon, or sorry, moon. We can use this. Talk to somebody you trust. Talk about those emotions. Talk about feelings. Talk about things that you need to talk about. If you don't have anybody, write it down. To a notebook. Do a phone to-do list. Whatever it is that you use, get it out of your system. Much better. Much, much better. Oh, I think it's all.
Hey,
Yeah.
from my side, this new moon on 30th of May of 2022, this one is a special one actually, because if I actually link it back 18 months ago, there was actually a 30th November 2020 lunar eclipse happening at 8 degrees of Gemini, 38 minutes, which is very close to this new moon point. Why do I want to link you guys back to 18 months ago? Because that lunar eclipse that happened end of November of 2020 was strongly linked to the Capitol Hill incident that happened on January 6, 2021. So it's almost like this lunar eclipse that I mentioned in November of 2020 is now birthing a new cycle. So the lunation point keep reiterating or repeating itself into a new cycle. Hence, I find that this may be linked to the new developments pertaining to Trump's association with that, January 6, 2021 incident. There may be some developments there on this new moon. And not to mention that this new moon actually conjunct the fixed star Aldebaran, which has the pure energy of Mars. And if I look to Mars, Mars is beside Jupiter. In the segment of the zodiacal wheel, there is also Jupiter root. On top of that, the new moon's ruler, Mercury, will be stationing direct in a few days. It's a white orb, but it is still, I would say, still conjunct that north node in Taurus in the sky at that point, and also trining Pluto and squaring Saturn in this case. What this is telling me is that the Ukraine-Russia thing that we've been experiencing for all these months, this new moon will be piggybacking on that total lunar eclipse that we just discussed, to kind of say that is well and alive and it'll be dragged out. Although there's negotiations, which is Gemini going on. That's the energy that I got. And countries, particularly the EU, since the eclipse point since the lunation point of this new moon is close to the 10th house cusp over that part of the world, maybe it's telling me is that there needs to be a more definite stance pertaining to economic sanctions in order to put more impetus into stopping this war. Those themes will be coming up. There may be a lot of news, Gemini. There may be also a lot of negotiations and discussions, which is Gemini as well pertaining to that. And not to mention that Gemini is all about social media and stuff. So I do see with this lunation, there'll be a continuation of censorship of free speech and also cyber attacks as well. As a lot of cyber hacking and there's also a lot of scammers that's among us as well that may be using social media to really bait you. So gotta take notice of that. what I want to mention is that Peru is of particular interest since this lunation point is actually conjunct the ascendant in that part of the world when this new moon is formed. So I wonder if over this new moon, there may be more like social unrest there, as Peru is also one of the countries that's seeking the International Monetary Fund or IMF for help to relieve its debt burden. And also this lunation point, it is setting over the densely populated areas of China. So I wonder if over this new moon, there may be like fresh new cases or this kind of extended draconian lockdown measures ever since late March of this year that may be, just keep going on. On a more personal level, over this new moon, you may actually feel that you are being fueled with enthusiastic action because of that Mars and Jupiter together energy in Aries. And you just can't take things sitting down. You need to like go and do it, or just do it like what Nike, recommends. And I just need to point out something, because Mars and Jupiter in Aries, there may be also the inclination to overestimate your energy and abilities, or there's misestimation of circumstances, because there can be like this kind of an expanded sense of self-confidence to go for things. So you may jump before you actually learn how to walk. So also take note of overdoing things as well, because when there's like Aries energy, particularly the two masculine planets, Mars and Jupiter conjunct in a masculine sign Aries, there can be a lot of impatience going on. I do see a lot more traffic and movement related accidents coming up. And not to mention that because the ruler of that new moon here is conjunct algol, and I do note that Amber Heard and also Johnny Depp, they've got very important planets also like at this point in the zodiacal wheel as well. So there may be even more news coming from them. Maybe it's dragged out all the way into June.
I really hope not. Guys, it's like basically it's their business.
Yeah, it's
The
all
only
aired
reason
out, all the dirty laundry, literally.
it's
Yeah.
crazy, but like the one of the reasons why I'm a little bit happy for men, because I'm a man, and Johnny Depp was stripped from a lot of things, and it
Yes.
turns out, I don't know, luckily I haven't watched almost any of it. I looked like 7 minutes of some video, but like I'm glad that the accusations and the Me Too movement. Obviously there was so much good about the Me Too movement, but there was also a tiny sliver of bad with the Me Too movement of people attacking people who didn't abuse them, and actually in this case, a lot of the evidence suggests that Johnny was the one being abused.
If I'm not wrong, Amber Heard has got Venus conjunct algol. Johnny Depp has got Mercury, Venus conjunct algol. There you go.
Like literally, like how close?
25 to 27 degrees of Taurus.
Whoa, that's the close.
So this new moon with the ruler of the lunation point being Mercury conjunct algol, and it's still retrograde, and it's going to station there in the next 4 or 5 days. Yeah, this is very much highlighting that it may be dragged well into June. So I don't know how much of this circus will be dragged out, but it's all coming to he said, she said. But I just know that Johnny Depp has lost a lot of like income because of this. Yeah, for being dropped. Yeah.
Probably he will be fine, but I mean that's just again the point.
If I'm not wrong, he's no longer going back to Pirates of the Caribbean franchise after he's been dropped from the initial accusations of domestic abuse.
But anyway, I don't want to I'm keeping myself out of it. Good luck
Yeah,
to Johnny, and I'm out.
But this one is like, I just find it very like laughable, really, like with this Mercury retrograde so pronounced. And I think that's what I have pertaining to the month of May, really. Yeah. So anything that you
Great.
want to tell the audience for May?
Oh, it's very hard for me to, I guess, sum it up so quickly. But find a balance between the earthly activities and material activities, and then the emotional side, which also needs your attention. Both, in my mind, this month need our attention, and we need to make plans. We need to ration. We need to revisit things. We need to make them better.
I think a lot of us will be taking May to kind of think about our financial decisions. How to move forward with like what to spend, what not to spend on. Yeah.
Extremely important, guys, for things that are coming up and how things are, and reevaluate those things, make better plans, ration, and be grounded, and
Yes.
gather up emotional mastery if you can, and you're going to need it going through these wild times. And I guess see you soon in the next month.
Yeah, I'm hoping June to be like a lighter month, but then like I already saw something that's worth discussing. So
Coming to you soon.
At least it's not eclipse season. So take care, people.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.